All right, all right, all right. I am going to go ahead and hop into a 14-man draft and see if any of y'all go ahead and join me or not. And if so, then I will go ahead and go over my 20-man roster a little bit and the changes that I'm going to be making to it. But in the time being, I'm just going to join the next 14-man roster or 14-man mock draft that I can. Haven't done really like a final 14-man mock draft quite yet, so I'm going to go ahead and roll with that. And but realistically, I'll probably have time to go through one or two mock drafts tonight and then go over some moves that I'm going to make to my 20-man roster and then probably end the night on that. What is going on, my guy Rio Goated? Thanks for joining us, man. Really just kind of doing some mock drafts tonight, right? Tomorrow, or not tomorrow, excuse me. Wednesday, I'm going to be running quite a few 12-man mock drafts in preparation for my actual 12-man draft that also our co-host Steven, it's both of our leagues, right? We'll be doing that actual draft on Wednesday, and I should be live streaming that draft Wednesday night, but at some point, probably during the afternoon, I'll live stream a couple 12-man mock drafts as well. So I'm kind of saving, um, most of my 12-man mock drafts until then, but I also need to get some under my belt before Wednesday as well. So I'm thinking about potentially live streaming some 12-man mock drafts tomorrow and definitely going to be live streaming a couple Wednesday afternoon leading into uh, that actual draft on Wednesday night. But nonetheless, feel free to go ahead and throw any fantasy questions or concerns that you guys have in the live chat, of course. And we'll just go through this 14-man mock draft, like I said, and then we'll go over one or two roster changes that I need to make to my 20-man team. Potentially not going to be starting the Arizona Cardinals defense, and definitely need to add a kicker, as well as I need to drop one or two players, and I mean obviously one of them, for a kicker, and then going out and getting potentially another tight end, as we have a pretty bad matchup with Jared Cook versus that Washington football team coming up, and I do think there's one or two tight ends out there on the waiver wire that we can potentially add to this roster. I mean, I did drop a video this morning kind of going over my thought process on what I need to do with this roster overall and what I could do to improve it. So definitely check that out in the meantime. But that's, essentially it, right? I need to think about which one of these two receivers I'm going to drop, and adding a kicker, as well as potentially switching out this defense, and debating if I want to drop two of these receivers or Ramondre Stevenson and go out and add another tight end to this roster. So kind of keep an eye on this mock draft. We've got a couple minutes until it takes off, but nonetheless, I wonder if I can just pull up. Let's see if we can get some of the players out there on the waiver wire up on the screen here. So I know that there's a couple tight ends that I would be happy to add. I mean, I'm projected not the least amount of points for week one, but I think the second least amount. And I mean, part of that is obviously because I do not have a kicker in my starting lineup, but we need to fix that. We need to get a better defense streaming as well. I think that there's a couple potential. Let's see. I should probably be going to players and not transactions. I am like consistently checking the recent transactions just to see if anyone's making any moves, and so far nobody has. But I I'm definitely afraid that some people are going to start making some moves that could affect us. So, that is why I wanted to hop on here tonight, essentially, and get some of these moves taken care of. But looking down at who's available, we should have, if this will work for us. Yeah, we should have a couple defenses that are going to be worth streaming this week. So let's go ahead and just pull those up and have them ready. The New York Giants at the Denver Broncos are probably a pretty good option, right? But also the Carolina Panthers at the New York Jets, excuse me, probably the best streaming option and definitely better than that of the Arizona Cardinals versus the Tennessee Titans, right? And knowing that it's Zach Wilson's first NFL start, we can expect him to make some mistakes, right? But overall, obviously, we do have Corey Davis on this roster as well, so we're somewhat rooting for that offense. But I could see Zach Wilson going out and having a decent game where he has a few turnovers, but Corey Davis still, benefits throughout that game as well. Nonetheless, I think I am going to go ahead and put Marquez Callaway in our lineup over Darrell Henderson. And I think from a PPR standpoint, that's a better option at the moment. And it also, we don't entirely know how, the running back situation with the Rams is going to work out. So it kind of gives us some flexibility in the sense that we can kind of watch how that plays out. Of course, we really hope that Darrell Henderson is the lead back, right? But nonetheless, we will go ahead and make that first roster change to my 20-man roster, and then we will get right into this mock draft. So let me know between now and Thursday, but really between now and Wednesday, what type of actual mock drafts you guys need to see so that I can, conduct a couple more. And let me know if you guys haven't drafted yet, of course, and if you have already drafted as well. So moving on to the clock, I just joined the first 14-man mock draft that was available, of course, and then I just went in at a random spot as well. So we have got the 5th overall selection. This is a PPR scoring format. Excuse me. Man, I love 14-man leagues overall. I definitely miss playing in a 14-man league. I did last year, but I at the moment I'm not playing in one this year. So, like I have mentioned a few times, I'm still considering joining one more league this year. So, let me know what you guys think would be the most helpful, whether it's an 8-man, 10-man, 14-man, 16-man, as I am playing in a 12 and 20-man league already. But let me know if there's any specific leagues that would help you guys out. So I'm going to grab that of Alvin Kamara here, and then we've got 18 more selections until we pick. So we've got pick 24 and pick 33. So I do believe in this mock draft that we can land two very good players overall between those two spots. So we will go ahead and just anticipate. And the nice thing is, we can kind of conduct this mock draft, right? I will go ahead and pull up the draft results here, but we can also kind of think about what we want to do with this 20-man roster overall. So I really do think the New York Giants have a good, chance at having a good Week 1 game against the Broncos, but I also think that Broncos offense is going to perform pretty well. So at the moment, I think the Carolina Panthers defense is the best option. I'm kind of trying to look at, some of the upcoming matchups past Week 1 where some of these teams will be. Philadelphia's got a pretty tough stretch, man. They played pretty well last year defensively to some degree. They actually had some pretty good fantasy performances. As in this mock draft, we've seen Aaron Jones, Tyreek Hill, Davante Adams, and Jonathan Taylor off the board. But I don't know, man. That's a pretty tough stretch for a pretty mediocre team, right? The other option here would be the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are obviously pretty abysmal from a defensive standpoint, right? But they're playing the Houston Texans, although I just don't feel fully confident in really rolling with that team. So The Panthers really where I'm looking at the moment, as we see Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, and Stephon Diggs off the board in this mock draft. Let's see if we can't go ahead. I'm going to just start up the Carolina Panthers, and let's see. They do play the Saints in week 2, but then they turn around and play Houston in week 3, which is a pretty favorable matchup. But then we do see Dallas and Philly. I mean, I don't know how I feel about either of those. I don't think they're going to be very good matchups overall. And then really we don't see another favorable matchup, in my opinion, until week 7. So I don't know. They're at least viable for weeks 1 and week 3, which works in our benefit. So going back to this mock draft, we've seen Stephon Diggs, Antonio Gibson, Najee Harris, and Travis Kelce all off the board. Moving into round 2, let's go ahead and pull up any available tight ends and see who we've got here. Really, the guys I'm looking at would be Mo Alley Cox, and if I can find him, because earlier when I made the video I released this morning, I had some trouble finding him. Man, I don't know why he's so lowly rated on these on the tight end. Maybe it's going off of points scored the year before. I think that's what it is, because when I pull up the Yahoo app and I go to the free agents, Pat F, our guy on the Steelers, is pretty high up on the free agent rankings. But nonetheless, let's hone in here in round 2 of this mock draft. We've seen Patty Mahomes, Calvin Ridley, D-Hop, and Joe Mixon all off the board. So pretty interesting. Well, not really. I mean, these are all pretty standard players to get selected, right? But we will go ahead and move into pick 24 here. And I do believe that while we could go receiver here, we could get 2 really lethal running backs at pick 24 and pick 33. The other option here is A.J. Brown is taken off the clock, is to go ahead and grab a really, of true value at the tight end position in George Kittle or Darren Waller. So some pretty good options there as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just draft Darren Waller, although I have no problem in, reaching for George Kittle, so to speak. I didn't even want to say it. In terms of these rankings, we'd be reaching for George Kittle, but I view George Kittle almost in the same fashion as I view that of Darren Waller. But what we can do here is we should be able to turn around at pick 33 and get either David Montgomery or that of James Robinson. Now, if we didn't pick Darren Waller there, then we could have gone out and got Kamara, James Robinson, and David Montgomery, which would have been pretty lethal overall. But nonetheless, man, let's go ahead and look at some of these tight ends as I'm trying to find my guy, Pat F. And yeah, I think this is ranking these players by the points that they scored last year. So let's pull up my watch list here. Yeah, so we can find Pat F pretty easily, in that fashion, so to speak. Before we go over Pat F, let's go ahead and move back to this mock draft here, as we do only have 3 more selections until we pick. So we've seen Josh Allen, Allen Robinson, Terry McLaurin, and Chris Carson, and now Kyler Murray going with the 30th overall selection. So we will sit back as we only have 2 more picks until we select. Chris Carson, man, I mean, I really want to be higher on him. I mean, he was on my fantasy squad last year, but I'm just really, really worried about that overall strength of schedule. As we see David Montgomery picked with selection 31. So there goes Keenan Allen. But I was about to say, don't be surprised if James Robinson gets selected here, right? So nonetheless, let's go ahead and add James Robinson to this roster, someone who we took in my 20-man league, right? And then we will move into round 4, where we don't have a selection until pick 52, but then we do get a pretty valuable selection in round 5 with pick 61 overall, as CeeDee Lamb is off the board. So Pat F, my guy, my big sleeper, right? Not a lot of information on him through the Yahoo website, as he, has not played in the NFL before this year. He's only 9% rostered, right? So my other option here would be Mo Alley Cox, who's got a pretty favorable matchup against Seattle, but then he does see the Rams in week 2, and then bounces back to a pretty good matchup against Tennessee, but then we're seeing another bad stretch of Miami and Baltimore until we see another good game in versus Houston, but then San Francisco, and then you've got a really nice stretch here: Tennessee, New York Jets, and Jacksonville, all in a row. I wonder if this will show me his stats from last year. I guess not. But that's really the only other guy that I have a positive feeling about. I mean, we can see that last year he put up about 80 points. So only 394 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, Jack Doyle is available in this league as well. So I don't know, man. It's really tough. That's my one regret, really, from, and all things considered. While there are other things that, other players that I regretted not drafting, I really regret not taking a tight end earlier in my 20-man draft. But nonetheless, man, in this current mock draft that we're going over since my selection of James Robinson, right, we saw CeeDee Lamb taken, followed by that of Chris Godwin, then George Kittle, Mike Evans, Amari Cooper, and Adam Thielen, all off of the board. So we're seeing a big run at the receiver position, and now Gus Edwards is off the board, right? We would really like for Josh Jacobs to fall to us at pick 52, but I truly don't see that happening. We could go out and target a quarterback with this next selection, but more than likely we will try and get either a running back or receiver coming up here. So like I said, Josh Jacobs would be a great target to fall to us. Darrell Henderson would be an option here. That would look a lot like my 20-man roster overall, right? But I do think that it would give us some pretty good value if we go ahead and get a wide receiver that we're confident in. So DJ Moore is the guy that we would like to see fall here, but he's a top-rated player, or not the top-rated player, the third from the top, right? And then Josh Jacobs only the second. So those are the two guys we'd love to see fall, but I truly don't think that they will. So we could go out and target a Brandon Ayuk, a Deontay Johnson, a Julio Jones, just give us some good overall wide receiver value to add to these two running backs that we're very confident in, and of course a tremendous value at the tight end position. So going back to the tight ends that we can kind of evaluate in my 20-man league, I mean, it's pretty tough, man. I mean, we've got Chris Herndon sitting there, which would be kind of an interesting move, but we really don't want to chase one of these Minnesota tight ends until we know how things play out. Jimmy Graham would be another really interesting move, but we know that he's going to be splitting some time, splitting a lot of targets with Cole Kmet in that offense. Like I said, Jack Doyle's sitting down here too, who, let's see if we can't find his stats. I mean, pretty close to that of Mo Alley Cox. So I think against Seattle, we can kind of bank on one of those tight ends scoring. But nonetheless, man, I just think that Pat F is my breakout guy and that I want to take him, right? So I'll kind of hold off still before we make our move at the tight end position within that league. And then the other thing we have to consider is that we're going to have to pick up a kicker and add a kicker to that roster as well. But nonetheless, here in this mock draft, we've seen Dak Prescott, DeAndre Swift, Josh Jacobs, and Miles Sanders all off the board. So we are looking for DJ Moore to fall to us here at pick 52, but yeah, he just got selected. I was going to say it's very unlikely. I don't really see that happening. There's a lot of potential places we could go here. Lamar Jackson is probably my top target because he is the best value on the board at the moment. So I really wouldn't mind adding him here, although we kind of wanted a receiver or another running back that we felt confident in, right? So nonetheless, I think that we can probably take Lamar here and then turn back at pick 61 and take a player like Jerry Jeudy or Chase Claypool or Deontay Johnson and still come out with a wide receiver one that we feel confident in, and then hopefully flip into round 6 and get a running back that we feel pretty confident in overall. So let's go ahead and add Lamar Jackson. Then we'll sit back for 8 more selections and see what wide receiver one we end up with here. So Julio Jones goes off the board, and only 7 more selections until we make another selection in this mock draft as Mike Davis is selected. So Brandon Ayuk sitting here, Deontay Johnson, definitely our top 2 targets overall. But I wouldn't mind coming out of here, with a Jerry Jeudy or a Chase Claypool, as I do believe we're going to be able to stack the position pretty favorably throughout this draft. The other option that I'm considering here is going with a running back like a Javonte Williams, who potentially gives us some really good sneaky RB1 value, right? So that's an option as well. But I don't know, man. If you guys have any advice at the tight end position or any tight ends that you guys would like to see me add over Mo Alley Cox or Pat F, then let me know. But I really think it's going to be between one of those 2 guys, and I think I'm taking a gamble on that of Pat F, right? I think that's really going to be the best move for this offense. I don't know how I feel about Jared Cook versus the Washington football team, although statistically speaking, Jared Cook gives us a better bet overall. But I have kind of decided that Gabriel Davis is going to be the player that I have to drop here. But I got to go out and pick up a kicker. I mean, so I have to drop 2 guys. It's some really tough decisions that I'm going to have to make here. So I might just have to roll with Jared Cook for now at the tight end position. And, I'm not too upset with that, but the fact that Pat F is sitting out there on the waiver wire, and that's like my breakout candidate of the year at the position, it definitely bothers me. But we'll see how it plays out. We'll make a decision by the end of this live stream. So nonetheless here, Javonte Williams still sitting here available at pick 61. So let's add him. Let's get a really good value at the running back position to give Alvin Kamara and James Robinson a little bit of support. And this is a nice roster, or start to a roster in my opinion. We've got a tremendous value at the quarterback position and the tight end position. We've got 2 running backs that we firmly believe in, and then we've got a potential breakout RB1. And even if Javonte Williams wasn't someone who broke out, passing Melvin Gordon at the position, well, he's still got an extremely easy strength of schedule, and we can bank on him being a very, very good overall handcuff situation. So, obviously, now moving into round 6, we need to fill, the wide receiver position. Excuse me, but as we really found out in my 20-man draft last night, the wide receiver position is so incredibly deep. I mean, you can get some wide receiver 1 value essentially through the entire draft. So the other guy we would consider here would be Ronald Jones II, and just trying to add another running back of RB1, potential to this roster. Kareem Hunt sitting here also gives us a very good handcuff situation, and those are really the only 2 running backs that I have left that I would be willing to take outside of Nyheim Hines, being that we are theoretically drafting for a PPR league. So those are the 2 guys that I've got queued up here. I don't believe Kareem Hunt will last, and he is selected here with pick 67. After that, of Trey Sermon, Robbie Anderson, and Myles Gaskin up there at pick 64. But I do think that it's possible Ronald Jones falls to us at pick 80. He's ranked 80th overall, but I won't be surprised if he's selected as well. And if we do pick him, then we need to just go absolutely bonkers at the wide receiver position for the sake of this mock draft afterwards. But as we see, I mean, we like the core start to this roster, right? So nonetheless, let's go ahead and go ahead and see who's available at the wide receiver spot. And like I said, guys, if you're here in the live chat, if you've got any fantasy questions, any concerns, or any input onto my 20-man roster, or even concerns or questions around this mock draft that I'm currently conducting, feel free to hop in there and shout out anything that you guys want to. So, nonetheless, looking at the receiver position, I mean, we definitely have AB and Corey Davis as our top guys, as Russell Wilson, Odell Beckham, and Aaron Rodgers are all taken off the board. And now we're kind of moving into that next tier. But, I mean, you guys saw me during my 20-man draft get really excited about, all of these receivers. You kind of sit in the same tier, right? I mean, really looking at like Corey Davis, and I'll throw Brandon Cooks in there now that we know that Tyrod Taylor is starting. I mean, obviously not the same value, if we knew that Deshaun Watson was starting, but at least we know that there's going to be a starter in that Houston Texans offense, right? So really, I think you can get a lot of good value out of a lot of these receivers, and then moving into that next tier, I think there's a lot of good value still there, and I'm really not convinced that I need to take a receiver early on. So when we're looking at this roster that we've put together so far, I mean, we could have sacrificed the selection of Darren Waller for a wide receiver one, and then gone out and still gotten a tight end that we're pretty confident in overall towards the end of this draft. But after kind of fumbling at the tight end position in my 20-man league, at least at the moment, as we don't exactly know how Jared Cook's season is going to turn out, I just feel like I have far less of a problem going out and getting a guy like Darren Waller early on. So we'll sit back here. We've seen Jamar Chase, Logan Thomas, and Tom Brady off the board, and now Ronald Jones, who was our prime target. So now we've got a decision to make at pick 80 with 2 more picks until we do make that decision. So Tyler Higbee off the board. I would say that truly my top target here would be either Robert Tonyan, Juju Smith-Schuster, or AB. I know that we already have a tight end, and we obviously need to fill the receiver position, but given that within this mock draft we can flex another tight end, I wouldn't mind pairing Darren Waller with a guy like Robert Tonyan, right? But let's go out and let's add a very good PPR value in my eyes and that of Antonio Brown. But I wouldn't mind taking a risk on Courtland Sutton there. I wouldn't mind taking Juju Smith-Schuster there. But nonetheless, we want to turn around here at pick 89 and pick up Corey Davis. If he's not available, then we will go ahead and draft that of Brandon Cooks. I think, in my opinion, both these guys give you pretty similar value, right? Both of them not really on offenses that we're crazy about, but they still present wide receiver one value. And then Devonta Smith down there on the Philadelphia Eagles, another guy who we're not crazy about him because we haven't seen him play in a full season, of course, but we really like the potential value at the receiver position in Devonta Smith. So really any of these 3 guys, Corey Davis, Brandon Cooks, or Devonta Smith, are our top targets here at pick 89 overall. And I think we'll be happy adding any of them to this roster. If you guys are just getting in here, we've got, in this mock draft, we got Lamar Jackson, AB, Alvin Kamara, James Robinson, Darren Waller, and Javonte Williams. This is a 14-man mock draft, and I am making, some active decisions on my 20-man roster overall. So if you guys have any input onto, which one of these players I should drop, as I do need to add a kicker, and I am considering dropping one of these receivers for a tight end, which would really put Gabriel Davis and Rondale Moore on the hot seat, but to some degree it also puts Ramondre Stevenson on the hot seat as well. But if you guys tuned in for my 20-man draft last night, you guys know that we paid a pretty heavy price for these 3 players, but outside of that, we do need to go ahead and probably replace Arizona's defense, as we're not crazy about that week 1 matchup against Tennessee, and we don't really see a favorable matchup until week 3, although I'm not entirely convinced that Jacksonville is going to come out and play poorly. So I don't know, man. So our turn is coming up next. Saw a pretty big run at the tight end position, but Sony Michel, Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki, and Jalen Hurts, the last 4 players taken. So let's go ahead and swing back here. And like I said, man, Corey Davis versus Brandon Cooks. I like both of them. For the sake of this mock draft, let's roll with that of Brandon Cooks, who, like I mentioned, we do know that Tyrod Taylor is going to be throwing the football to Brandon Cooks this season. So, not as much value as if we knew Deshaun Watson was playing, right? But we'll take it. And like I said, I mean, Brandon Cooks versus Corey Davis, they're both on offenses that we're not in love with, that we're not going to see come out and perform in crazy fashion, right? But nonetheless, they are wide receiver number ones on their respective teams, at least at the moment. That's what we're assuming. So they are both certainly worth the selection. So moving here into round 8, I mean, we really don't need to do anything except draft a couple of receivers, right? And then if, some other values at other positions, like the running back position, potentially show up, like a Naheem Hines. I mean, that's really the only guy that I've got, worth taking in this draft. We could go out and add a second tight end to this roster, right? I mean, maybe a Hunter Henry, maybe, and a part of me really doesn't want to be drafting Jared Cook at all, because I'm a little scared of Jared Cook at the moment, considering that that's the guy who I came out of my 20-man mock draft with, or excuse me, not mock draft, my 20-man actual draft, right, in my league, right? But nonetheless, I mean, we've already got Darren Waller on this roster, so we really don't need to panic at the tight end position. We know that we can go out and get someone later on, as we see Johnny Smith taken off the board and Dallas Goedert, and then both Joe Burrow and Matt Ryan. So it is looking like it's paid off that we went out and got a quarterback and tight end early on, as we see Gerald Everett off the board as well. And then we've got, 3 running backs we believe in. And then, I mean, not the prettiest 2 receivers, but these guys from a PPR standpoint are definitely going to get us where we need to be. So nonetheless, we've got some time until we pick at, selection 108. And I mean, my top target at the moment is absolutely going to be Corey Davis, but it's very likely that he does get selected, as James Conner is off the board. And, we kind of move into that next tier, right, of Devonta Smith, and then like Chenault Jr. or DJ Chark, as Juju's taken off the board. I mean, Michael Pittman sitting here, right? Naheem Hines, he was obviously a running back, not a receiver, but we've got Callaway, Marvin Jones, I mean, even Jarvis Landry, but Jacoby Myers and Michael Pittman, I mean, Will Fuller. So we're kind of moving into that next tier of receivers, but like I said, I really, really like a lot of those guys. Zach Moss and the LA Rams defense are off the board. Yeah, I don't think that Corey Davis will fall here, but now we see the Washington football team selected. So to some degree, it could definitely happen, but we'll see how it works out. We'll just kind of sit back and see what happens. Now, Pittsburgh Steelers defense is taken. It looks like we're getting very fortunate that we have some auto drafters in here, and a lot of defenses are being taken overall. I might leave this specific draft a little early, as we have a lot of mock drafters in here, and I think that's going to work to our advantage and not give us the most true overall perspective here. But nonetheless, we'll just kind of see what happens, and then I'll move into kind of finalizing those decisions on my 20-man roster. So let's just kind of sit back and wait here and see what happens. Yeah, I mean, we're getting a really big run at the defensive position, which is okay. I mean, realistically, that could happen in your actual draft, right? But more than likely, we probably wouldn't see this many defenses, at least in the 8th round, right? I mean, realistically, this could happen at a later point in the draft after we see kind of the first defense gone out and selected, right? But nonetheless, I mean, for the sake of this mock draft, of course, we are going to target that of Corey Davis, as he is definitely the best player on the board. But it looks like I've got one other person drafting in here. So as long as he stays in here, I'll stay in here, and then I'll probably hop into a 12-man mock draft and then finalize my 20-man roster spots here, and then probably close out this live stream for the night. So yeah, it's just me and my guy Ben. Let's see who Ben's got on his roster. Matthew Stafford. 3 very good receivers in Justin Jefferson, Chris Godwin, and Jerry Jeudy. Then he's got Aaron Jones, a very good value, of course, at the running back position, then Damian Harris and Tyler Higbee, and the Baltimore Ravens defense. So a pretty good start to his roster. If he can fill that out, with some really good skill position players here in the later rounds, then I think that's a great roster, no doubt, right? So, but nonetheless, man, let's go ahead and switch over. I think I'm going to go ahead. Oh man, it's a really tough decision because yeah, I don't see Arizona playing great against Tennessee. It's just a bad week 1 matchup where I could see both of those offenses putting up a lot of points, and I could definitely see Arizona putting up a lot of points against Tennessee. I think week 2 is a decent matchup against Minnesota, but not the best. And then you see Jacksonville, which is a pretty favorable matchup. But then, man, you got the Rams, you got San Francisco, you got Cleveland. You don't really see a favorable matchup again until week 7. So I do think that we're going to go ahead and add a defense in the Carolina Panthers, who are playing the New York Jets in week 1. And that will give us the best value overall, at least from a standpoint of streaming a defense. So let's go ahead and do that. I mean, it kind of pains me because I was pretty excited about getting Arizona's defense, as they played pretty well last week, or not last week, last year, that is. But I think that this is the best move for this roster. So we will go ahead and do that. Oh, and it's only a waiver claim. So, yeah, that doesn't go through till September 7th. So that's interesting, right? I mean, that means there could be other teams out there who have already made some moves. So, oh my gosh, I've only got 9 seconds to draft. Let's go ahead and add Devonta Smith to this roster. And let's see, Ben is still in here, so we're staying in this roster, or not in this roster, excuse me, in this mock draft. And I really like this team, man. I think we've got a lot of good value at key positions, like the quarterback and tight end position. We've got 3 running backs that we believe in. Now we've got 4 very good wide receivers on this squad as well. So feeling pretty good about that mock draft. And I think at the moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pick up a kicker. And I don't think I'm going to make a move at the tight end position quite yet. Let's see here. We'll go ahead and see what kickers are available. Yeah, it kind of pains me to drop Gabriel Davis because I had a really good feeling about him overall. One of our fellow members of the Catch Fan came out and said that AJ Green is dealing with some injuries, so that kind of helps Moore's on our offense or on our roster have a better shot in his offense than that of Gabriel Davis, and I think that's a good point, but nonetheless, I think we'll hold off at changing our tight end up because I think Jared Cook still gives us the best shot. And I'm just hoping that, no one is really hip to Pat F, as that's a guy I really see as a potential breakout candidate. And nonetheless, man, when we're looking at the kicker position, I think Brandon McManus is my best shot. I mean, they've got him, I was trying to see. I mean, you see what how many points he put up last year, right? But I was trying to see how many points they've got him projected at. I'm not sure if this is going to show us, so I'm not going to waste our time. But yeah, man, I think we have to drop one of these receivers, and that's probably going to have to be Gabriel Davis. Um, what we'll do is we'll go ahead. I think this is going to go through once again as a. Well, let's see. I don't think it's going to be a. Since I don't have a kicker. Nope, yeah, I was wrong. Okay, it is a waiver claim, man. So we won't know until September 7th if, I got Carolina's defense or if I got Brandon McManus, right? Uh, and that's pretty big as those two moves really affect our roster and our matchup in week 1. So I don't know, man. It's a little scary. Like I said, we paid a pretty good price for Gabriel Davis, but seeing that he plays Pittsburgh, Miami, and Washington in those first 3 weeks, I mean, those are pretty tough matchups overall, right? Houston's a good matchup. Kansas City, not the best. And then Tennessee, another good matchup, right? So I do think that we could see some flashes from Gabriel Davis in a couple of these, first couple weeks, right? And then obviously week 8 against Miami, not a very good matchup, right? But then he's got a pretty good stretch of Jacksonville and the New York Jets. But then once again, I mean, Indianapolis, New Orleans, New England, Tampa Bay, and even Carolina to some degree, and then New England again. I mean, that's a pretty difficult stretch. At worst, a mediocre stretch. But then he does finish out the year with Atlanta and the New York Jets. But yeah, I mean, look right here. Pittsburgh gave up the 9th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers last season. Listen, Gabriel Davis played really well, in that final preseason game, and all of those targets were coming from Josh Allen. But of course, I mean, Stephon Diggs wasn't out there, right? I mean, in terms of a number 4 receiver on a team, Gabriel Davis and Rondale Moore, two very good options overall. So I just think at the moment, looking at the overall, outside of the Rams and San Francisco, really, but looking at this first stretch, I think that Rondale Moore has a better overall stretch there. So let's hone back into this 14-man mock draft as we only have a couple seconds here until we pick. Let's go ahead and add Shenault Jr. to this roster. Another good pick there would have definitely been that of Nyheim Hines, as we don't have much depth at the RB position on this roster, but I also like that of Marquez Callaway sitting here. So, I mean, we're kind of loading up pretty quickly at our bench spots, right? I mean, 3 receivers that we feel good about: Corey Davis, Devonta Smith, and Shenault Jr. So it does look like our last fellow drafter has left. So I like the start to this 14-man roster, but I feel kind of slighted just drafting against the computer. So, and I feel like that makes it a little bit unrealistic. So, definitely a good start to this 14-man roster, but let's go ahead and hop into another mock draft here. Let's see if we can reload, and let's see if we can't get a more realistic mock draft going. I don't really want to mock draft against the computer. That doesn't really feel the best to me. So let's see if we can't just hop into, I don't know, either a 12-man or a 14-man. I feel like I slighted anyone looking for a 14-man mock draft there, but let's see if we can't join. This looks like it's pretty busy. Let's see if we got in or not. Yeah, they had a problem filling our request, so let's see if we can't find another 12-man roster. Some of these are really hard to get into. I'm not even looking at the roster spot. Okay, so we got pick 12 in this mock draft, which is about to start, so that's good. And like I said, this will probably be the last mock draft I'm able to do tonight. But that's all good, man. Definitely need to practice at least one 12-man mock draft a day leading up until Wednesday. As I do have my actual draft on Wednesday and my 12-man league that also my co-host Steven plays in. So Definitely need to get some practice under our belt. But like I said, at some point Wednesday afternoon, I'm going to be live streaming a couple 12-man mock drafts and really trying to piece together my overall strategy. But on top of that, I will be live streaming, mine and Steven's 12-man league and our draft, which I'm really excited about. I had a lot of fun doing that 20-man live draft last night. It was a total blast. So nonetheless, we know that we're picking in about 2 minutes, and let's just take a look at some of the available players in my 20-man league. If you guys are just getting in here, we added a waiver to add Carolina's defense versus the New York Jets in week 1 and to drop the Arizona Cardinals defense. And then we are adding Brandon Mcmanus at the kicker position and dropping Gabriel Davis. Holding off at the tight end position for now, as I still think we have some pretty good value in Jared Cook. But we do know that my sleeper candidate, Pat F., is out there, and that Mo Alley Cox is still hanging around as well. But let's see here. So this just has all of the available players, right? You're gonna see some of those quarterbacks sprinkled in at the top, excuse me, and then some players who were injured. I think I have a IR spot on this roster, so if we can find a pretty good player, who is on IR or eligible to be put on our IR spot, then it wouldn't hurt to add one of them as well, because then we can just kind of stash them, throughout the season. But if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to drop a player, add an injured player to my roster, move them to the IR, and then go out and add a player to my active roster. So let's say we dropped Rondell Moore, for example, for a player on IR. Well, then we lose, or we at least take the risk of potentially losing Rondell Moore to the waiver wire. So while it's a process that could certainly pay off, it's an overall risky process as well. So we kind of want to start looking, at some of these different players and really building up our watch list. And let's see, we are moving into this 12-man mock draft. So let's go ahead and turn off these draft sounds, and let's see how this mock draft rolls out. So just joined at a random spot in the first 12-man mock draft I could get in, so it gave us pick 12 overall, right? So we're probably going to be targeting 2 running backs here, or a running back and a true absolute value player like a Travis Kelce or a Patty Mahomes. We won't be selecting again until pick 36 and pick 37. So, I mean, obviously, I have really thought about the idea of if I get the 12th or the 11th, overall selection in my 12-man league, of going out and getting Patty Mahomes and Travis Kelce, or Patty Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. I've really thought about this a lot, but then kind of the flip side to that is, let's say we take Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce if they're both available. Well, then we're just going to have to load up on questionable running backs, handcuff situations, good matchup, strength of schedule situations at the running back position. And we're just going to have to be playing with, a lot of later round wide receivers, which I don't mind at all. But the other aspect of, all of this is, here we see Travis Kelce picked at the 6th overall selection. We might not even have the opportunity to pair that of Travis Kelce and Patty Mahomes at that point in the draft, and it's even unlikely that we see Patrick Mahomes selected before pick 12 as well. So with that being said, I think that the best method is still to just get 2 running backs if we do end up with the 12th overall selection, and then turn around in round 3, and we can still get a very valuable quarterback at that point. And then even here in round 5 and round 6, you can still get a good talent overall at the quarterback position. So I think here with pick 12 and pick 13, for the sake of this mock draft, unless Tyreek Hill falls out, which I don't think he will, Yeah, as he goes, with the 10th overall selection here. But that would be a guy. I think Tyreek Hill and Davante Adams are the two guys that I would consider taking. It's no knock on Stephon Diggs, who's available at the moment. But nonetheless, man, I mean, Calvin Ridley sitting here, another great value. We've got Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, Antonio Gibson. I mean, we've just got a ton a ton of freaking talent. So I don't think you can really go wrong with Austin Eckler, Antonio Gibson, or Saquon Barkley. But for the sake of this mock draft, I'm going to pick up Antonio Gibson, and then I'm going to roll with Najee Harris as my RB2 here. And we will just start off very RB heavy in this mock draft. What is going on? It's Crypt. Who would you take with the 8th pick in a 10-man league with Kelsey and Adams off the board? And he told me to snag Eckler, and I did not do so. My bad, man. I would have done it for you. But nonetheless, man, if you're looking, at the 8th pick overall, and Adams and Kelsey are already off the board, then quite honestly, I'm looking at the running back position and hoping to get a guy like Nick Chubb or Aaron Jones, someone who is a sure lock for over 1,200 rushing yards and around 8 scores and some work in the receiving game as well. But keep in mind that I am primarily a RB heavy strategist, someone who goes out and drafts a lot of running backs pretty early on. So I don't know if that turns you off by any means if you're asking about guys like Kelsey and Adams, but generally speaking, even in PPR formats, I'm still going out and getting a running back in the first round. And that's just where I kind of stand. And I think guys like Nick Chubb and Aaron Jones give you really, really good value around that, overall selection. I wouldn't mind like a Jonathan Taylor at that point either. So I think there's definitely a lot of good running backs you could potentially get. So here in the second round, and thank you for the question, it's Crypt. And like I said, guys, if you're in here, you guys have any fantasy questions or concerns, please throw them out to me. I'm happy to answer while we're playing around. So it's Crypt. I took a gamble and took Zeke. I mean, at the 8th overall selection, man, I think Zeke is a really good value. I think you're going to see a lot of drafts where you don't see Ezekiel Elliott available at that spot. So, while you might consider it a gamble, I think you got a really good value. I think you got a great selection, man. So I wouldn't beat yourself up about it. And I think Zeke's going to have a fantastic year overall. So here in the second round, I mean, after my selection of Najee Harris, we've seen a lot of talent wiped off the board. Stephon Diggs, DK Metcalf, Barkley, Eckler, D-Hop, Patty Mahomes, first QB taken in this draft, Calvin Ridley, Justin Jefferson, and CE8. So still 13 more selections until we pick. So until we've got pick 36 and 37. So what I would like to do here is potentially grab a tight end if a guy like George Kittle is sitting there and just shoring up that value, and then potentially also taking a quarterback like a Kyler Murray, who I think in Yahoo's ratings is very undervalued overall. But the other option of George Kittle's not sitting there, or if we think we can hold off all the way until the 5th round for a QB around pick 60 and pick 61, then we could just go double running back here and start things off targeting David Montgomery and James Robinson. But being that we pick at pick 36, both of those guys might not be available, or at least only one of them might be available. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep observing things here as we now see Darren Waller and Joe Mixon off the board. It's Crypt. Yeah, I think it's good value. Just nervous about the Cowboys staying healthy. I mean, man, they have seen a lot of injuries over the years. Over the years, but over the past year especially, right? As A.J. Brown and Montgomery are off the board now. But I think the biggest issue is, Zach Martin is out with COVID at the moment, which is probably the biggest concern, from the running standpoint on the Cowboys moving into that Thursday night opener. I think that's going to have some impact, especially with the way that front seven, of Tampa Bay plays. But I think overall Zeke is going to be fine. I mean, has stayed relatively healthy throughout his career, and he's definitely shown that he's pretty durable. So I wouldn't worry too much about Zeke. More so, I would worry about the receivers as well as, I mean, especially the quarterback position. We saw two quarterbacks go down last year in that offense, right? And I think the bigger issue is COVID affecting things at the moment, right? And they will be down in linemen come Thursday night, which in turn does affect Ezekiel Elliott as well. But you got to start Zeke every week. I mean, obviously you spent a high draft pick on him, and I think he'll be all right, man. So here we see Josh Allen picked 28th, also CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen, and Chris Carson, and now George Kittle, one of the guys we were targeting here. So really our prime target at the moment, of course, James Robinson. And I don't mind Josh Jacobs here as well. We could go with a receiver, and we could go with a true value at the quarterback position like Kyler Murray. So we'll kind of sit back and see what happens, because there's a lot of routes we could go as we see Chris Godwin and James Robinson off the board, followed by Terry McLaurin. And so this changes everything, man. I mean, obviously those two running backs that we really running are off the board. So couple things we could do here, right? I mean, Josh Jacobs is a guy that I feel like we have to go out and get. I really like the value of Mike Evans sitting here. I think after he gets selected, there's a pretty big drop-off. I mean, I like Amari Cooper. I like Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. Of course, I like DJ Moore with his strength of schedule, but I think Mike Evans gives you that extreme big play of potential week in and week out, right? And a lot of value overall. But the other option is Kyler Murray still sitting down there, just giving us a tremendous value at the quarterback position. But let's pick up a receiver early on, making our first two selections at the running back position, and then we're going RB receiver here in the third and fourth round. So turning around in round 5, we do want to go ahead and snag another QB, and then we might go ahead and just lock up another running back, and then what we would have to do after that is just go either double receiver or receiver tight end. And then after those 2 rounds, we just have to finish out this draft with wide receivers. If you're going to go wide receiver light, man, I wouldn't stress too much about it, as you can really load up at the receiver position, at the end of the draft. And in a 12-man league, you should be able to snag a couple valuable tight ends towards the end of the draft as well. But as we saw in my 20-man draft, I'm really scared about the tight end position if you hold off too long. So it's Crip, snag Tyreek Hill for my second round, and Keenan Allen with the third. Man, the fact that you got Tyreek Hill in the second round is absolutely nuts. I mean, I guess you did have the 8th pick, so you had a pretty early pick in the second round. But still, man, what a great value. I mean, he really shouldn't be lasting past like pick 10 or pick 12. So definitely a fantastic wide receiver 1 for you to end up with. And then I love the addition of Keenan Allen staying within that division, of course. Keenan Allen going to see some tremendous volume this year, and really one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL. So I think that's a great selection and a great start to your roster, of course, and 2 really good players to pair with Ezekiel Elliott as well. So, hey guys, if you're in here and you're enjoying this, please go ahead and get active in that live chat and let me know what type of fantasy questions and concerns or comments you have. And while you're here, guys, go ahead and smash that like button, as that will help other viewers out there, potentially see this stream and get a little hip to the catch as well. So I do appreciate you guys being here, of course, and definitely appreciate you guys smashing that like button as well. So nonetheless, man, a big run at running backs. I mean, Raheem Mostert and Gus Edwards off the board, Darrell Henderson as well, Tyler Lockett at the receiver position, Kyler Murray, a guy that we really wanted to see fall to us, and now that of DJ Moore off the board. So really moving in here to pick 60, there's a couple guys I would really like to get. I mean, there's a lot of good talent, so I don't want to start planning too early, but let's look at the running back position, right? It's possible we can hold off and still be able to get Javonte Williams, who's really become a top target for me overall. But not too concerned about the running back position, as we have three running backs we feel very good about overall. And I still think we can potentially get Ronald Jones in a later round, as we see DJ Moore, Damian Harris, Devontae Johnson, Lamar Jackson, and Kyle Pitts all off the board. So nonetheless, I mean, while there's still some very valuable quarterbacks left, I think we can hold off at the quarterback position and still get a guy that we're pretty confident in round 7 or round 8. So nonetheless, I mean, we'll have pick 84 and 85, and I think we'll be able to snag a pretty good quarterback. So what I'd like to do, I mean, if TJ Hawkinson is sitting here, then I'm going to have a hard time passing on him. And we just saw Kyle Pitts and Mark Andrews off the board, and now goes Jamar Chase at the receiver position. So Brandon Ayuk sitting here looking like a tremendous value, as is Julio Jones. Don't really mind the addition of Adam Thielen here, but we see my guy Jerry Jeudy sitting down there, and then we see TJ Hawkinson looking like a very good value at the tight end position as well. I mean, Kareem Hunt is sitting here. We could add another running back, but like I said, I do believe that being able to, the fact that we have Josh Jacobs, Antonio Gibson, and Najee Harris all on this team, it kind of gives us a little bit of leeway at the running back position, so to speak. So we now see a little bit of a run at the quarterback position with that of Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert off the board. So our biggest hope is that Brandon Ayuk falls here, and he did fall here. So I wouldn't mind taking Jerry Jeudy here whatsoever, right? But we'll go ahead and lock up Brandon Ayuk, and then we'll take this top talent at the tight end position and that of TJ Hawkinson, and then we will move right along, and we don't have another selection until 22 more picks. So really our top targets now become Javonte Williams and Aaron Rodgers. But it is likely that both of those guys get selected within the next 20 picks, as Russell Wilson and Logan Thomas are off the board, and now that of T. Higgins. So we'd also really like to get Ronald Jones, and it looks like, yeah, Aaron Rodgers just got selected. So he is off the board for us, and we kind of move into that next tier of, Mr. Tom Brady himself. I don't know, man. We might, hold off a little bit longer and just roll with Ryan Tannehill as Kareem Hunt is now selected. So we'll just kind of sit back, and I'm going to save. I mean, we've got a lot of, some evaluations for that 20-man roster to do, and kind of looking at who's available and if we want to queue up any guys. I mean, Darius Slayton is sitting here. Looking like a pretty good overall value, so we'll queue him up. We'll queue up Dalton Schultz as well, as a potential player. That's a big thing in these 20-man leagues, is having your active queue and having your active watch list, right? So I like the addition of Kendrick Bourne to our watch list, and we'll move along and see if there's anyone else we think we should at least be watching during the regular season. Maybe a Demarcus Robinson, right? At least gives us, some sort of value, being that he's on the Kansas City Chiefs. Anthony Miller might be an interesting selection coming in at the wide receiver 3 in that offense. Same with James Washington. He's more of a wide receiver 4. So other than that, man, I'm not seeing really anyone who jumps out to me. I mean, obviously this is a very deep league with a lot of, a lot of team managers, right, and a lot of teams overall. So we're not going to see a ton of players coming out. So I did see that Le'Veon Bell had the Ravens hosted him. So that kind of hurts, any of your. I mean, they also brought in Devontae Freeman, which is pretty interesting too. But we do see a little bit of. If you did go out and get Tyson Williams as a late round guy, and even Gus Edwards, right, it kind of speaks against what John Harbaugh came out and said when he did say that the Ravens were going to stay with the committee approach, but not bringing in any veteran players. So obviously they worked out 2 veteran players today. Definitely an interesting development, but I wouldn't jump the gun and go out and get a guy like Le'Veon Bell, as he didn't really play too entirely well with the Chiefs last year. Uh, but it's definitely an interesting development, and makes me feel a little bit better about not picking Gus Edwards last night, although he is certainly the most valuable running back in that on that team to get. So honing back into this 12-man draft, man, we've seen a lot of players that we really like off the board. Javonte Williams, Chase Claypool, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and Tom Brady. All guys I was considering, all gone, swept off the board, followed by Tyler Higbee, Chanel Jr., Odell Beckham, and Chase Edmonds. So at the moment, our absolute top target is that of Ronald Jones, the second, who is pretty highly ranked. So that is definitely causing a little bit of stress for us. The other guy that I like here is actually Robbie Anderson, as his strength of schedule is ridiculously easy. So I would say if Ronald Jones goes, then we will target Robbie Anderson, and then vice versa, right? If Ronald Jones goes, then we'll go out and target that of Robbie Anderson. But also, I mean, Ryan Tannehill is still sitting here. Definitely, we need to lock up a quarterback within this mock draft as well. So definitely some interesting developments here, as we saw a ton of talent just wiped off the board, right? And now we see Trey Sermon and Myles Gaskin both at the running back position taken. So Robbie Anderson still available at the moment. If he does not get swept up here, then that's definitely going to change things, as now Corey Davis is taken off the board, hurting a later round guy that we would evaluate, but he was just ranked right under that Brandon Cooks. So nonetheless, man, Robbie Anderson, an absolute steal at this point in the draft. So let's snag him up, and then let's add Ronald Jones, as I think, even though if we don't get that of Ryan Tannehill, we can still secure a pretty valuable quarterback overall. And man, I really went into this season, not wanting to, settle at the quarterback position, and really wanting to go out and get a guy earlier on, like a Kyler Murray or a Lamar Jackson. And then now that I'm closer to my actual draft, I keep doing this thing that I always do, where I just want to load up at the skill position. I want to get a couple receivers I believe in. I want 3 or 4 running backs that I absolutely have faith in, and then I want a stud tight end as well, especially in these 12-man leagues. So I don't know, man. I mean, we just kind of retrospectively, let's say, we sacrifice like a Josh Jacobs or a Mike Evans. I would say that Mike Evans would be the more feasible player, and we went out and got like a Kyler Murray there. Then maybe we'd feel a little bit different about this roster, as we still have a lot of faith in Robbie Anderson, especially looking at his strength of schedule, and we have a lot of faith in a lot of these late round receivers, right? So I don't know, man. It's kind of a tough thing, and this is why I want to do a lot of 12-man mock drafts before Wednesday night when I do draft, and do my actual live draft, because I'm definitely playing around with a couple different scenarios here and a couple different strategies. So once again, looking at the available players in my 20-man league, it's pretty thin, to say the least. It's very thin. I really don't see anyone who's jumping out to me at the moment. Denzel Mims, kind of a interesting potential player. We'll go ahead and add him to our watch list, as well as Deshaun Hamilton. And that's really it. I mean, I guess Kyle Rudolph on the New York Giants, really being a tight end 2 on that team. I mean, at least we know what he offers, and it gives us some insight overall to maybe his potential. But we also know that Evan Ingram's on that offense, and don't really think that he's going to overcome Evan Ingram, respectively within that offense. So nonetheless, man, I really just don't see anyone that we really feel good about overall. So I don't think, this is definitely something we want to keep an eye on week in and week out, right? Because in this 20-man league, you've got to know who's available. You've got to know who's performing well and playing well, right? But I really just don't think I see anyone. If there's anyone that I'm missing, please go ahead and either hit up the live chat, or if you're watching this retrospectively, leave it in the comments down below. But just to recap, let's go ahead and pull up my roster for my 20-man team. So at the moment, the two waiver wires that we've got in, we are adding the Carolina Panthers defense and dropping Arizona's defense, as Carolina has a much better week 1 matchup against the New York Jets. And then we are adding Brandon Mcmanus and dropping Gabriel Davis, as we do need a kicker. In order to get a kicker in our lineup, we have to drop a player, and Gabriel Davis, a pretty difficult stretch. I mean, Pittsburgh, Miami, Washington, then a very favorable matchup week 4, then another difficult matchup week 5 against Kansas City, and then another good matchup in week 6 against Tennessee. Excuse me. So, nonetheless, we needed to drop a receiver. And our fellow member of the Catch fam, shout out to you, made for TV _ recommended holding on to Rondale Moore of the Arizona Cardinals, as we know that AJ Green is dealing with an injury. And really, Moore and Davis are both wide receiver 4s in their respective offenses. And really, when we're looking at the first 3 weeks, Rondale Moore has a much better, much easier strength of schedule overall, although being in week 4, 5, and 6, he's got a pretty difficult stretch with the Rams, the Niners, and the Browns, but then a pretty good matchup in week 7. So out of the first 7 weeks, we're seeing more favorable matchups than less favorable, although looking back to week 9, he sees the Niners again, but then, we're pretty confident against the Panthers and the Seattle Seahawks as well. So overall, I think keeping Moore is a good option. The only thing that we decided not to do is we're not dropping anyone to add an additional tight end. I mean, we don't particularly like this matchup against the Washington football team for Jared Cook, but I think that he still gives us the best shot to at least get 7 to 10 points. So we'll keep rolling with Jared Cook. I mean, we did draft him for a reason. But nonetheless, we also moved Marquez Callaway into our starting lineup over Darrell Henderson to see if, kind of how that running back situation plays out with the Rams. I still have the best feeling overall about Henderson, like I mentioned, but I think for the time being that it's best to throw him on the bench, especially in a decent, matchup, in terms of, I guess, an halfway non-decent matchup, as Chicago is pretty good against the run overall, or at least they have been historically, right? So yeah, the 9th fewest fantasy points to running backs last season. So I think that that's a good move, and it puts a true wide receiver 1 into the lineup. But don't get me wrong, man, throwing DJ Chark into the lineup is something else I'm going to be considering that he is playing against the Houston Texans, who gave up the 7th most fantasy points to wide receivers last season. So definitely a lot of decisions to make, right? And we have some pretty good receivers, luckily. So I feel good at the receiver position and their RB position, as we've got 2 pretty favorable matchups, and especially a favorable matchup with James Robinson against Houston. So let's home back in to this 12-man mock draft, which the fantasy gods blessed us, and somehow Ryan Tannehill is sitting here available, which really adds some really good overall value to this roster. And now we've got a couple options, as Marquez Callaway is sitting here available, but we feel pretty good at the receiver position, right, with Mike Evans and Brandon Ayuk. We feel pretty good at the tight end position, but really the only decision is, do we add another tight end like a Mike Gesicki, or do we go out and get a receiver 1? I'm going to draft Callaway, and I think I did that right on time. Oh, no, I didn't. Yeah, I missed the pick. So we have the Niners defense. So shout out to Made for TV _ who went out and got your defense here. Nonetheless, not the biggest deal. We know retrospectively that we could have got either Mike Gesicki or Marquez Callaway with that selection, who Marquez Callaway just got selected. It is what it is. It's just a mock draft, and we were kind of focused on our 20-man team, so it's probably my fault. I really felt like I clicked the button just in time, but it's all good, man. So nonetheless, we have a lot of players that we do like left in this draft, and let's just go ahead and check. We still have 4 more bench spots to fill. So I do think that we can end up with some pretty good overall value. We now see Mike Gesicki taken. Gerald Everett would be a nice player to pair with that of TJ Hawkinson. Jacoby Myers at the receiver position is sitting here. Jalen Waddle is sitting here, who gives us some potential at the wide receiver 1 value. We've got Darnell Mooney sitting there, who I just butchered his name completely, but that's okay. Gronk is still sitting here. A guy who I really wanted in my 20-man league. He got picked very early. So, I've mentioned this quite a few times, but Gronk is your tight end 6 on average last year. So don't be sleeping on him, man. And I just want to see where they have Jared Cook projected again, over 500 receiving yards and about 5 touchdowns. Just trying to make myself feel better about that selection in my 20-man league. But nonetheless, man, we're going to finish out this 12-man mock draft, and then more than likely maybe go over my 20-team league moves one more time, and then we'll end the night. So if you guys have any fantasy questions, of course, go ahead and throw them in the live chat. If you're watching this retrospectively, man, don't be afraid to drop a comment down below with any overall fantasy questions, fantasy concerns, right? I was looking at my team medals. Those look pretty cool, but I know no one cares about those. But nonetheless, man, I think we're pretty set in stone with what we're going to do with my 20-man team. So I'll go over that one more time before we end this live stream. And nonetheless, we'll just kind of sit back and really we're just picking some skill position players for this mock draft. And of course, man, if you guys haven't already and you're in here, go ahead and smash that like button, man. It truly will help other viewers see this video. And if you're new here, man, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, as nothing else helps the channel more than subscribing to the channel. And we do truly appreciate all of the Catch fam. So shout out to you guys, of course. So nonetheless, man, things got pretty thin here. We would have, definitely liked to either have that of Marquez Callaway or Mike Gesicki on this team, man. And we know that we could have got either of them. I don't know why this is scrolling so crazy. It's like not stopping no matter what I do. So let's go ahead and switch over to just the receiver position, as Mike Williams is taken off of the board. And there's our guy Gabriel Davis, who we're talking about dropping. But I'm trying to find, there goes Tyrell Williams on the Lions. So I think there's a lot of good value. Michael Pittman is looking like the guy I'd like to get, as well as Jalen Waddle. It's really interesting when you're this far in the draft and you're seeing players projected at over 1,000 receiving yards, just under 1,000 receiving yards, and I don't know if I'm banking on Jarvis Landry to have 1,000 receiving yards. I love Jarvis Landry as a player, but I don't know, man. We haven't really seen him come out and play how we're used to seeing him play in at least a year or so. So I'm a little wary of him, but I do believe in that Browns offense, and I certainly hope that he does come out and perform well. So nonetheless, man, he's an option at this point in the draft, someone who I think I should have considered in my 20-man league that I did not necessarily. So nonetheless, definitely an option, but I kind of like Michael Pittman a little bit more overall. And I know that we have Robbie Anderson on this team, but Terrace Marshall Jr. is still a guy who I'm not ready to sleep on. Like I said, that's my top sleeper at the moment, and not a guy who you're seeing move up in draft boards like Marquez Callaway, like Corey Davis, to where you really have to target them if you want them on your team. So I definitely consider him a sleeper, and I definitely think he should be, on your watch list or on your draft board, as we see Tampa Bay's defense selected, and now we have one more selection until we pick again. So we want to target Michael Pittman and Jalen Waddle here, and it looks like we can get both of them. So let's go ahead and pick up Michael Pittman, and then let's now pick up that of Jalen Waddle. And really, Sterling Shepard is my next top target. Once again, look where they have him projected, 1,000 receiving yards and 5 touchdowns. So really, when we're looking at this team, we somehow got Ryan Tannehill to fall to us. We went pretty RB heavy early on. We did miss the selection of either David Montgomery or James Robinson. We got some receivers that we're definitely happy with, and we snagged a top talent at the tight end position pretty early on in that TJ Hawkinson, but I would like to get him some support at the tight end position in this draft as well. So really, we're going to be targeting one more receiver and one more tight end, then we'll finish the night out with a kicker. So let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my matchup for my 20-man league this week. It's pretty tough, man. I'm definitely going to have to try hard to win this week. Definitely going to have some things go my way. He's got A.J. Green in his lineup. An absolute stud quarterback, 2 very good receivers, and then 2 serviceable running backs, and a very good tight end out of Robert Tonyan, and of course, an elite defense at the Chicago Bears with a Andy Dalton at the starting quarterback position. So, definitely, a little bit scary overall, but I think that we might just have enough to keep up with this team, right? Obviously, I think New England's defense is going to come out and play well in week 1. We know that Stephon Gilmore will not be active, so that helps us overall. I like Jerry Jeudy at the Giants a lot. I like Corey Davis at the Panthers a lot, although we're trying to pick up the Panthers defense and start them against the Jets. I think no matter what, we're going to see Corey Davis from a PPR standpoint come out and have a very good game. Aaron Jones at the New Orleans Saints gives us some very, very good value overall. I really like that matchup. Then he's got Detroit next week, so that's great, right? And then we've got James Robinson at Houston. I expect him to have a really good game against that Houston Texans defense, right? And then we've got Jared Cook at Washington, which is probably our worst matchup, but I'll take it, man. At this point, I think that's what we're just going to have to roll with, and maybe stop overthinking it and see how Jared Cook comes out and performs within that Chargers offense. And then right now, I've got Marquez Callaway against Green Bay. And here, looks like the forecast got some thunderstorms for that game. I will say, let's see. I want to see what they're saying about him, but yeah, that's what I was thinking. He's going to be facing Jair Alexander, which is a really scary matchup for a rookie receiver, right? I like him more in the coming weeks against Carolina and New England as long as Gilmore is still out, and the New York Giants. And I think when we're looking at it, right, I mean, he's projected more points, and we know that the targets are going to be spread around a little bit in this Jacksonville Jaguars receiving core. But I think DJ Chark against Houston might be the better matchup overall, just being that, I mean, Houston's awful, right? I mean, definitely against the pass, right? 7th most points given up last year to receivers on average, right? But yeah, I think it's a good point that he hasn't had the opportunity to really build that chemistry with Trevor Lawrence, like we've seen with Chenault Jr. and like we've seen with that of Marvin Jones. So I don't know, man. We might have to bank on Callaway getting a touchdown, or at least just getting a lot of looks from Jameis Winston. So, yeah, it looks like we've got that's going to be interesting. I mean, that's a good game, man. The Packers and the Saints, and apparently we're going to have some, or at least a 45% chance of a thunderstorm, which will affect things. And then we see, 2 other players in that game on our opponent's roster as well. So, I don't know. I think this is about as good as I can get it for week 1. So it looks like I am the underdog, but I'm used to that, man. I usually am. I'm usually going in with a overall strategic approach. So let's home back in here and see who's available. As we know, we want a receiver or 2, and a tight end. So let's go ahead and check who's available at the tight end position. Really no one I would want to go out and take at this point in the draft. So we see Michael Thomas, Cole Kmet, and James White taken. So if Gronk was sitting here, I would go ahead and take him, but I think we can hold off since he's not there. I mean, I like Darnell Mooney sitting here, right? But, I mean, I wouldn't mind adding Tua to this team. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draft Sterling Shepard, and then I'm actually going to turn around and see if Tyrell Williams. I mean, I think he might fall out. So I'm actually going to take Tua in this mock draft because I would love to get him in my 12-man league as I've been talking him up all off-season / preseason. I'm just getting a breaking news alert from the NFL app to my phone. And it looks like the Ravens and Mark Andrews have agreed to a $56 million extension for a 4-year overall extension on his contract. So let's see. I make some. Yeah, he is the highest paid tight end through annual value. So, wow, that's crazy. I mean, it's well deserved, man. He's played very, very well, of course. In that offense, right? And Lamar Jackson loves him. He definitely fits the bill of a Baltimore Ravens player. So good for Mark Andrews. Shout out to Mark Andrews. What a great day for him. I'm sure he is very, very happy. So let's see. Yeah. Justice Hill suffered a torn Achilles, which we already knew. Man, you really got to think about those Ravens running backs. Speaking of the Ravens and Mark Andrews, right? Overall, man, a lot of injuries on that team right now. So definitely something to keep in mind, right? We definitely hope that if you went out and got Gus Edwards or any of the other backs on that team, that you're not being scared off by them, having so many veteran running backs coming out and trying out for them. So if they add a guy, I mean, they tried out both Devontae Freeman and Le'Veon Bell. Be really interesting to watch Le'Veon Bell play against the Steelers once again, right? So we do have the final pick in this draft, and the options here would be to add, Tyrell Williams at the receiver position if he is available. Let's see if he's sitting here. I think he got snagged up. Oh, no, he's sitting right here. Never mind. And the option here would be to draft him and forfeit a kicker, or just go ahead and draft a kicker and end this with a true roster. And I mean, man, I know that we didn't mean to pick the 49ers defense, but I think we still ended up with a pretty good overall squad. I mean, we still got Pittman, Waddle, and Shepard at the receiver position on top of Robbie Anderson, Brandon Ayuk, and Mike Evans. So I feel pretty good about the receivers here overall. And that's actually 6 receivers, so I can't draft another receiver. So we will just end this night with a kicker, right? But breaking down this roster further, I think we had a really good quarterback land to us in that of Ryan Tannehill, and we went out and got some depth with that of Tua at the RB position. I think we're pretty loaded, man. Antonio Gibson, Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs, and Ronald Jones. I feel really good about those 4 guys. I mean, we could have got an Austin Eckler early on or a Saquon Barkley, so maybe we didn't make the best moves at running back in some people's perspectives, but I'm happy with those 4 guys. And then a really good value at the tight end position, that of TJ Hawkinson, where he fell to us. So feel pretty good about this roster overall. I wouldn't be disappointed whatsoever with these guys, and we got a really good defense sprinkled in there, which I'm not used to. Once again, that was a accidental pick. We meant to get Marquez Callaway or Mike Gesicki with that selection, but it is what it is, man. So nonetheless, feel pretty good about this roster from a 12-man standpoint, and we will end the night with a kicker. Like I said, man, for my 20-man league, what we did is we went ahead and we put in a waiver to go ahead and replace Arizona's defense with the Carolina Panthers, who are facing the New York Jets. And that Panthers defense has been improved in the offseason, which gives us a little bit better value at the defensive position. And then we went ahead and we put in a waiver to drop Gabriel Davis for a kicker in that of Brandon McManus. And then, we will not be putting in any waivers for an additional tight end at the moment, as we just don't want to give up the value of Rondale Moore or Ramondre Stevenson and those guys potentially breaking out. If they're not performing towards the beginning of the year, then we will go out and potentially pick up another tight end like a Mo Alley Cox or our guy Pat F or maybe a Jimmy Graham. I mean, it's pretty thin overall, right? Let's go ahead and draft our kicker here. Let's just, in honor of our 20-man league, let's take that of Brandon McManus here, and then that draft is over. So I feel pretty good about this mock draft. Not really my typical strategy, kind of bounced around. Got a Mike Evans pretty early, got a tight end pretty early, but feel pretty good about the depth on this roster and the players overall. So a good mock draft nonetheless. And then for my 20-man roster, the only other thing we did for the time being is we threw Marquez Callaway in the starting lineup. Like I said, considering moving DJ Chark there. And then we took our guy D10D's Darrell Henderson out, but I'm also considering putting him back in. I mean, we just don't know exactly how that situation is going to work out from the backfield, although we feel pretty good about him. But we like this matchup against the Texans for DJ Chark. We just don't know if the chemistry is there, as he really hasn't been playing in the preseason like Shenault Jr. and Marvin Jones have. And then once again, we put Callaway in there, but we know that he sees a very tough matchup as the receiver one versus that of Jaire Alexander, right? So nonetheless, excuse me, just making some different moves here with my 20-man roster. So I appreciate your guys' feedback. Appreciate anyone who was active in the chat tonight, of course. Definitely appreciate answering your guys' fantasy questions and concerns. So as always, man, if you guys haven't already, go ahead and smash that like button. If you guys are watching this in retrospect, go ahead and smash the like button. It still helps. If you are new here, man, go ahead and join the Catch fam and hit that subscribe button. We are on the road to 100 subscribers, getting closer day by day here at the Catch. And of course, man, keep tuning in to these live streams and tune in to our live stream Wednesday night, in which I will be conducting my 12-man draft live, of course, which is going to be a blast, just like that 20-man live stream was, of course. So, and always, man, I'll keep you guys updated on my 20-man roster, and when I have questions and concerns or I'm making roster changes, I will be live streaming those, or at least recording them and putting them up for you guys to see. And like I said, I want you guys to be a part of my 20-man roster journey, and I want you guys to help me make those decisions. So don't be afraid to give me feedback in the comment sections, of course. So as always, man, I thank you guys for joining.